Was Sweet Baby Inc. a PsyOp the entire time? Well, obviously, you don't need a formal conspiracy to have a large group of people that are all oriented in the same direction, that are all exposed to and believe the same things, and they just organically, individually, all decide to do the same things that also happen to enrich themselves and their own group and push their agenda. But it looks like Sweet Baby Inc. may actually have been part of some sort of concerted effort to push a certain message. I think a lot of people thought this was the case, but this here article from That Park Place, which I will put in the description, is suggesting that actually the whole rise of the Sweet Baby Inc. and just general DEI consultancy stuff was actually fairly calculated. A new expose from YouTube channel Gothic Therapy, hosted by Master of the TDS and Writing Raven, has exploded across gaming circles, pulling back the curtain on the origin of one of the most controversial narrative consultancies in the industry, Sweet Baby Inc. Long positioned as a boutique firm dedicated to uplifting marginalized voices through storytelling, the company now faces devastating allegations that its very foundation is a fabricated cover story and that it may have government roots. The video, which, again, obviously at this point, I can't say for sure all of this stuff is alleged, ominously titled The End of the Sweet Baby Lie, goes far beyond the typical criticism of DEI influence in gaming, which we do know is a real thing. Partially, this is because of ESG. You're getting money if you meet certain DEI benchmarks, and therefore people are incentivized to put that messaging in their games just to make sure that they can, make their budget. It claims to uncover a buried founder, falsified company records, and what could be deep ties to the Canadian government. If what's alleged in the video is true, Sweet Baby Inc.'s rise in the gaming industry was not organic, but orchestrated. Now, full transparency, Writing Raven of the Gothic Therapy YouTube channel writes for That Park Place on unrelated matters under the name Raven Redgrave. I don't really think that's a conflict of interest, if I'm going to be totally honest. I think if you agree with this person's, position, you agree with their position, they're not really getting anything extra here. Maybe they're getting a little bit of extra exposure, but I don't think it's a conflict of interest. Now, the claim that it's not organic but orchestrated, who thinks that that's not the case? For real, who actually thinks that these consultancy agencies just organically, oh yeah, everybody actually just wanted these things in games. Game studios wanted to pay out money to consultancy agencies that get to tell them how to tell the story that they want to tell. Who really thinks that that was totally organic? They just did it. Oh yeah, you know what? We just had all this extra money lying around, and we decided to look around for some consultancy agencies so that we could employ them and pro them. No, they're clearly not organic. But how much of this was planned out by other actors? I'm not sure about that. The Sweet Baby myth falls apart. Sweet Baby Inc. claims it was founded in 2018 by Kim Belair, Dave Bedard, and Ariadne McGillivray, three friends with a dream of reforming game narratives. The press-friendly origin story of Sweet Baby has been repeated in interviews, panels, and keynotes for years. But Gothic Therapy dug into Canadian government filings, good work, and discovered that the real story begins with someone else entirely, a man named Terrence Jason Huberts. According to incorporation records, Terrence Jason Huberts was listed on day one as a vice president, director, and shareholder. His name appears as one of the actual founding members of the company in 2018, alongside Kim Belair and Ariadne McGillivray. But there's a twist. Hubert's name was quietly scrubbed from the record a year later in a corporate correction. His shares were retroactively reassigned to Bel Air, effectively rewriting the past and removing him from history. Hmm. Now, these types of corporate filing changes and these things are not necessarily nefarious. These things do happen a lot of times. People will be like, hey, you know what? I'm going to incorporate under my wife's name. I'm going to make this company list them as the, founder, whatever. These things do happen. And it's because the corporate paperwork, bureaucracy, red tape, you know, ecosystem is so weird and crazy that sometimes it just makes sense to do that. And therefore, changing these things is not necessarily, an act of, conspiracy. It's just like you unfortunately have to do it to game the system because the system is so convoluted and ridiculous that you can't do it any other way. But it is also something to look into because it can be used to hide stuff. Bedard was only brought into the company in 2020 as COO, years after the company's incorporation. Yet he has frequently been referred to as a co founder. The timeline simply doesn't add up. And that's just the beginning. On May 21st, 2018, from a single Montreal condo unit, two companies were incorporated by Terrence Jason Huberts. One was a numbered company, which dissolved quietly in 2021. The other, Sweet Baby Inc. Same man, same condo, same day. One was discarded, the other grew into a media darling, helping shape AAA games under the guise of narrative justice. Yet the man who started it all, completely gone. No website mentioned, no interviews, no social presence, no credit. Gotham Therapy calls it what it appears to be: erasure. Now, again, let's just speculate. What could that have been? Maybe they had a falling out. Maybe these people, had a falling out. This guy was, just a piece of crap. And they're like, we're getting you out of this company. Now, the thing is, usually that requires like legal work. Like, we need to litigate this stuff. If you're in this company, you've founded it, and two other people want to kick you out, unless there's some very specific stuff in a contract that you can just be summarily ousted, you generally speaking need to like litigate that because that person doesn't want to get kicked out of a company that they founded because maybe that company does well, maybe you get Sweet Baby Inc. money. It's usually not going to happen, but it doesn't necessarily, again, mean that the erasure of this stuff is for sure nefarious. But the fact that there is no, litigation on this does mean that, okay, this person maybe did want to get, invisible. The deeper Gothic therapy dug into Terrence Jason Huberts, the stranger things became. There's no LinkedIn, no public record, no explanation for why a co-founder would be wiped from existence. But then came a potential clue. In the late 1980s, a man named Terry Huberts served as a member of British Columbia's Legislative Assembly and Minister of Parks. In his sparse interviews from that time, he publicly mentioned having a son named Jason. That name match isn't trivial, neither is what came next. Gothic Therapy uncovered that one of Terrence Jason Hubert's companies listed a business address at, I'm not going to mention the address, while Terry Huberts years later operated a veterinary clinic at the same numbered but a totally different address. Two entirely different cities, but the same suite number, 475. This is also something that if you like watch The Wire, these things do actually happen a lot where people just like numbers and they put all their filings under the same number, even if they're different addresses. This does happen. It's very weird, but it does happen. According to the channel, the statistical odds of these overlapping names, family connections, and address numbers aligning by pure coincidence is 1 in 100 million. I'm not going to go into the math, maybe. The framework that changes everything. In 1989, as Minister of Parks, Terry Huberts authored a government policy framework that outlined how private contractors could be embedded within public systems, quietly, efficiently, and without public scrutiny. Yeah, I mean, look, there's definitely, I don't even think anyone can argue that there was not a concerted effort to have, progressive politics do a slow march through the institutions. Okay? Now, whether you want to argue whether or not it was successful, a lot of influential people were calling for that, said, here's how we're going to do it, and here's our goals, and here are the results that we're going to see. And it seemed to be the case that that did happen. If Terrence Jason Huberts is the same man, or the son of that man, then Gothic Therapy alleges Sweet Baby Inc. may have been structured from the beginning to operate similarly as an embedded narrative force within gaming companies, a consultancy with a mission not just to tell stories, but to control them. And look, that does line up with the sort of Marxist worldview of there's no such thing as anything other than power dynamics. That's it. So it's just who controls things. Stories are not actually pieces of art, they are propaganda. Just inherently, all art is propaganda. All art is a means of power and control. That's it. There is no such thing as beauty, there is no such thing as art, there is only subtle control. If this is the same man, then Sweet Baby Inc. wasn't built to tell stories. Did we ever think that was the case? Master of the TDS said in the video, it was created by the Canadian government from day one, structured by an insider disguised as a consultancy, used to control the narrative. Now, again, even if it's not the Canadian government, certainly this consultancy agency was there to control narratives. That very, very literally, that's what they were about. The government response that raises more questions. Following the video's release, Gothic Therapy sent a formal request to the British Columbia Legislative Assembly asking for Terry Hubert's full legal name. The response? They couldn't confirm it. Because candidates are not required to use their legal names on ballots or in parliamentary documents, the Assembly could neither confirm nor deny whether Terry Huberts was short for Terrence Jason Huberts. In the words of Gothic Therapy, the truth was never meant to be found, but we found it anyway. Even more chilling, Gothic Therapy discovered that Sweet Baby Inc. registered a second business alias, Design Sweet Baby, on the exact same day as the original filing. It has no public use, no branding, and no clear purpose. The theory? It was a lifeboat identity, a backup plan in case the first brand faced collapse. I mean, do YouTubers usually make secondary accounts just in case their first one gets struck down or something like that? Yeah, it happens all the time. It completely makes sense. And I mean, again, Design Sweet Baby, the second business alias. Yeah, hey, you know what? We're gonna buy up a bunch of website domains that kind of are close to ours, just in case the first one is difficult to get or whatever. It happens all the time. So this doesn't surprise me. If what Gothic Therapy revealed is accurate, Sweet Baby Inc. is not the grassroots, justice-driven narrative firm it claims to be. It's a company with a falsified origin, a buried founder, and possible ties to Canadian government operations. The erasure of Terrence Jason Huberts is the rewriting of company filings, the statistical overlap with a government official, the second secret alias. All of it paints a potential picture not of idealism, but of orchestration. People have speculated that Sweet Baby Inc. might be receiving government funding, almost certainly. But if this connection is real, then the company wasn't just funded by the Canadian government. It was built by a former government official from the very beginning. And when that truth threatened the image, they rewrote it. Now, let me actually just, I semi misspoke. Might be receiving government funding. I said almost certainly. What I actually meant by that was NGOs. They are technically non-governmental organizations that, generally speaking, receive a huge amount of funding from governments, Canada, the U.S., whatever, and then they are, told to disperse that funding in a way that the government is not supposed to or not allowed to. So the government is, through like an intermediary funding these things, even though it's technically not coming from the government. That stuff happens all the time. Not because it didn't matter, writing raving added, but because it mattered too much to let you see. If gaming companies are still working with Sweet Baby Inc., they might want to ask who really founded the company. What's the origin of Sweet Baby Inc., and what exactly are you letting them write? You also might want to ask yourself a more basic question, which is the writing any good? And I think with that, you can pretty much just go, oh, yeah, okay, so we don't have to pay these people. Yeah, we're not getting any of this ESG money anymore. That stuff dried up. Yeah, no, we're good. We can just not have them in our company anymore. And they will slink away. If the money's not there anymore, these people are not going to operate. Now, do I think Sweet Baby Inc. is a Canadian government conspiracy, these types of things? I mean, it could be. This stuff is actually like, coincidental, but fairly compelling coincidental evidence. Do I even really particularly care? Not really. I just clearly think that this whole Sweet Baby Inc. thing was always an inorganic, narrative driven, ridiculous identity politics consultancy service that does not need to and really shouldn't be in games at all. And the evidence for that is way more clear and obvious. And the response to that should also be clear and obvious, which is, yeah, just get them out of games. Get all of these consultancy agencies out of games. You can use that budget to hire better writers, pay them better if you like the writers you've got. That's it. With that being said, thank you very much for your time and attention. Good luck in all your endeavors. Let me know what you think down in the comments, and I shall say farewell for now.